Okay, I think we can get started. Um, Hi everyone, my name is Granura and I am a part of Simply Neuroscience as the event sponsorships lead. Today I have the honor of introducing Shriya Naidu, who will be giving a presentation on branching out through public engagement and outreach. So, a bit about her. Shriya is an outreach manager at the Center of Cognitive and Brain Sciences, IIT, in India. She is also the co founder of Stimulus, which is a youth led initiative improving access to neuroscience education in India. She has conducted multiple outreach events in the past, including Brain Awareness Week through the Dana Foundation and IBRO grant, and Neuro November with Stimulus and Project Encephalon. Her outreach activities aren't limited to neuroscience, as she has conducted multiple campaigns in alignment with sustainable development goals. So they include encouraging menstruating people to switch to sustainable products, upcycling old saris to give by giving livelihood to underprivileged women, and by creating awareness on garbage segregation through an online game. If you are a team member in an organization, you know that public engagement is crucial in improving your access and reach to your audience. Through her talk, Shriya will discuss how organizations could use outreach and public engagement to communicate their science, build networks, and benefit the community. And just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Please send any questions you have in the chat after the presentation is over. We will have around 5 to 10 minutes for question and answers at the end of the presentation. And please refrain from unmuting yourself during the presentation. Without further ado, let's give the virtual stage to Shriya.
Thank you so much, Purno. Thank you, Dina, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for joining in. I'll quickly share my slides and we'll just get to it. Let me know if my slides are visible.
Yep, we can see your slides.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, we can take questions in the end. I mean, that would be great. But I mean, if it's okay with the organizers, I would like to take up questions in the middle as well, just to ensure that it's not extremely monotonous. And some good discussions can probably come up with that, or some good points could come up from that. So I hope that's okay. If any questions are there in the chat, I might take them up depending on the question if it's related. All right. So with that, I'll just start off. Hi everyone, I'm Shriya. As Gunur introduced, I'm from Stimulus. I work currently at IIT Gandhinagar as an outreach manager, and this talk will be focusing on branching out through public engagement and outreach. It's targeted towards individuals who are looking at conducting outreach events, growing in the area, and also probably even looking at an opportunity to work as an outreach manager. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Stimulus. Stimulus is a youth-led organization. I run it with Sasha and Stuti Chakrabarti. Stuti actually had her talk right before. I hope you enjoyed her talk on networking if you attended it. And Stimulus's goals, or we three came together. We all have a background in neuroscience. We came together with a common goal of educating and improving access to neuroscience education within India. India is a lovely country. We have a lot of amazing things, and one of them is the number of students who are interested in doing engineering and medicine, and a lot of families who are also interested in encouraging these students' dreams or their dreams of pursuing engineering and medicine. However, in the process of that, sometimes there are a lot of other fields that get neglected, and it's important, or rather Stimulus considers it's important to inform about the different options that are there, and we focus on trying to inform students, young students, mostly high schoolers, about neuroscience, what it is, what research is, what is the scope within the Indian context of neuroscience research. And we do this through doing a lot of outreach in the brain sciences. If you notice the logo of Stimulus, the T and the U is in sign language. And this is mainly representative of also the advocacy that we try to do within the organization for people with disabilities. And it's not only just about raising awareness about disabilities, but also trying to make an inclusive society, especially within the Indian context. So, with that, I'll just talk a little bit about public engagement because that's a very important part of what Stimulus does in order to achieve its goals. And that's what a lot of different organizations are also trying to do, improve on, and especially in the age of misinformation and a whole lot of information that's accessible on the internet. It's really important to have the right public engagement, especially with organizations that have credibility and validity over topics that are increasingly important, such as um, especially in neuroscience. And today, I mean, considering the pandemic, there's been a lot of science communication on topics related to vaccines, people trying to understand how viruses work. All of this has brought out a conversation on how do we want to engage the public in a way that we inform them about different processes that are involved in the sciences, and apart from that, also let them know about future opportunities. So I have this lovely definition. It's from the National Coordinating Center for Public Engagement in the UK. And this is how they define public engagement. They described it as the myriad ways in which the activity um, and benefits of higher education and research can be shared with the public. Engagement is, by definition, a two-way process. It involves interaction, listening, and it's with the goal of generating mutual benefits. So I love this definition of public engagement because it very clearly highlights something that sometimes is overlooked, that it's a two-way process. It's about not just about giving access to information, but it's also about getting feedback. It's also about trying to understand who your community is. It definitely helps a lot in the research context, especially for the clinical context, because it gives you a chance to directly interact with the population that you're most likely working on. And that is a wonderful reason why we do public engagement. I mean, it's for the community, it's for social impact, but it's also to improve our understanding of these communities. Right. So with that, why is outreach necessary? I mean, I did cover a little bit in the previous slide, but I just want to mention this beautiful quote by Professor Noha from the Nigeria chapter of Society for Neuroscience. She's the president of the Nigeria chapter. It says, when you do outreach, you'll be contented with the fact that you're helping to make the world a better place by educating your community about how to keep a healthy brain. And I cannot emphasize on how important this quote is because, yes, we do outreach for a lot of reasons. And the only reason we should do outreach is to improve the society, to make it a better place, and to target audiences that need this kind of outreach. I'll get into all of those aspects a little more in the presentation as I go by. So I'll just share a little bit about the different activities that we've been doing in Stimulus so far. I'm taking a lot of examples from Stimulus because we do a lot of outreach and just want to share my examples so that you get an idea about what is the scope within outreach, because a lot of you are neuroscience communities and organizations. I think almost every institution has a neuroscience group and outreach activities. I mean, I think a lot of them are starting out with some sorts of outreach activities. And definitely, it being an online world today, we're all connected through these online mediums. There are a lot of limitations, but here's just a glimpse of the kind of outreach we've done, public engagement we've done so far. So we have here, I hope my screen, my this thing is visible. pen. Just, all right. So we have what's the neuroscience behind it? It's a video series we've uploaded on YouTube, which is basically while trying to explore what is the neuroscience, but very simple topics that we come across. So we based our first video on something that actually went viral. It was this dialogue from a soap serial, and a musician had made it into a very catchy song. And we talked about the Diana Deutsch's song "Speech to Sound Illusion" in that video to kind of get a also leverage the virality of that video and teach people about something related to neuroscience. They're like, oh yeah, I've heard that song. Oh, I get what the sound to speech to sound illusion is. It's a very interesting study. You should do. You should check it out. Then we did. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know what an Instagram takeover is, but it's. I just want to let you guys know. We have a page. Stimulus has an Instagram page, and we invited two members from the Music Cognition Lab in Nimhans in India to talk about what they do, how they do it, interact with the audience. So an Instagram takeover is just like Instagram is a social media platform, and then we invite people to take over our page and interact with them. And it's a really nice virtual experience of understanding how someone's life is, someone's experiences are. A lot of Ivy Leagues do this to give them an experience of how it is to be a student in an Ivy League, and it reaches to a lot of people. That's amazing. Apart from that, we also post a lot of you can say posts about general awareness. So this was one post on women in neuroscience, and it's really great to have this sort of information come out, say from an organization in India, because a lot of times we do look at a lot of women, men, people who have done great things, but there's a lot of information on the Western context. So when it comes from communities, especially from the Common South, it really helps because we're trying to look for representation from our end. So we know that there are women in neuroscience and who've done great work, and we look at and so we highlight women in neuroscience from our country. And then we have here, and I'm trying to highlight like the array of activities that you can do. We've done so far. You can take inspiration from it as well. We have so I just want to take you back to a few months ago when COVID was raging, and India did have a very hard time in that period. A lot of you may know about that. And during that time, some of the stimulus volunteers came up with a resources page where we had different helplines, we had counseling uh, links that people could go to, things they could read for anxiety, stress, just to know about what's happening to them. Is this normal? And places they could visit. So it was a resources page that they could go about, check out in case they needed any help. We weren't offering direct help because Stimulus is run by mostly high schoolers and undergraduates. So we couldn't offer any help like that, but we did try to do what we could do is offer some resources and collate resources that would be helpful for people to answer the questions that they probably had in their mind or probably look for help that they needed at that time. And then finally, we have Synaptic Society. I'm going to talk about it later as well, but it's basically a discussion forum for people to come and talk about topics related to neuroscience. It's different from a talk where people come and they just speak about a topic, and then you have all this information, and but then what do you do with that information? I mean, you have to exercise that information somehow. You have to form networks in order to make sense of everything that you know. So this sign up society is a lovely place for people to come together and have discussions over what they've learned. So we had our first meeting, and it was on brain and behavior, and people talked about a lot of different concepts and theories they knew. It's a very nice place to bust some myths and also to talk about concepts which are really debatable. So, yeah, that was a lot of events by Stimulus, and I'm just going to try to cover something more relevant to you. So, what kind of outreach is best for your organization? That is a question that you have to think about, because a lot of organizations, I mean, every organization has its own limitations, and it's important to think about who your target audience is, what are your resources, and everything. So I'm going to discuss that in the next slide, but all right, let me just discuss that right now. Um, so there are these three questions that I've put up, and this is like it will help you identify what kind of outreach is best. Firstly, each organization has their own goals. So, for example, if it's an organization like Simply Neuroscience, which has a goal of reaching out to not only early learners, but also to students who are within the scope of neuroscience, who are already doing it, and encourage them to pursue different fields in neuroscience, introduce them to different areas within neuroscience. I remember attending one of the talks on careers in neuroscience with Chinmay, and it was amazing to see the different opportunities that were presented. And so that's one of the goals that Simply Neuroscience has. Um, but then, what are the limitations that your organization has? You may have limitations not only in just in terms of funds, but you may have limitations in terms of workforce. You may not have a team of people. So you may be in an educational institution where outreach is not considered very important, and you may be one or two people who are interested to do an event, and you may not be able to do it as well as you want to do it. So it's not only limitations in terms of funds, it's also you need a team of people, you need support. Sometimes you also sometimes doing outreach events can be pretty taxing, so you also need friends to support you, professors to support you in this endeavor. And lastly, your target audience. Who is your target audience? If you read or watch any talk on outreach or on public engagement, this is something that everyone will stress on. Who is your target audience? It's so important to address your target audience, because if you do not address your target audience, you are talking to the wind. You are just doing something with all your effort and all your resources, but it's not reaching out to the right people. And remember that outreach is all about community improvement, and it's all about social impact. So if you're not able to create that impact, it's really sad to see that sometimes these outreach events don't work out because they're not targeted correctly, they're not designed correctly, and we'll look into that a little bit in the cons section of doing outreach events. But and so I'll just talk about these two events which I conducted. These are two very different events for extremely different organizations, conducted in extremely different ways and had completely different goals and different target audiences. And I'm going to talk about uh, these events, how they were executed, and how it also improves the organization, or how it helps reach the goals of the organization. So first we have Neuro November. It was something that Stimulus and Project Encephalon conducted in the November 2020. And it was a 4-day convention. It was something very similar to what Simply Neuroscience had conducted. It was called Simply Neurocon. And it was very similar to that. We had a lot of delegates come in. We had a lovely line of speakers, and we had competitions, literary competitions, art competitions, and we had a competition specifically for high school students, which was something new because generally, I mean, I'm not sure, we hadn't come across something related to neuroscience for high school students. So we had purposefully created something for the high school students, and and we also had paper presentations. So it was packed. It was a 4-day event, and it was extremely packed. What it did was it reached out to the youth who were interested in neuroscience, who were probably curious about neuroscience, who wanted access to some great speakers, but obviously couldn't because there are limitations in what is available online. Sometimes you have courses by these amazing speakers, but they are not freely available. And so they wanted access to these speakers, and they were able to get this free of cost during Neuro November convention. there were a lot of people who were just fed up of studying. I mean, they just wanted to express themselves creatively, but they like what they do. They understand and like neuroscience, so they did that through the different art and literary events that we had. And then there were the high schoolers who just never been introduced to neuroscience, and they came in with novel ideas. So we gave them some questions, and they had to try to, and they were related to neuropsychology mostly, and they had to come up with solutions, and the solutions were brilliant. So it was amazing for them to exercise or just go online and just search about this and just kind of learn something new and come up with some great solutions. So it was overall amazing. Everyone was enjoying themselves, and we were extremely tired. But we did the event, and it helped the organizations, not only the target audience, but the organizations who were running this event. It helped us reach out. So Stimulus was very new at that time, and this event really helped us reach out to a lot of young people, as well as improved our networks in terms of the professors that we could reach out to, the institutions that we could reach out to. And it's extremely important for for neuroscience organizations to consider some outreach events that help you build this. I mean, yes, you're doing it for the community, but then when you do this, you have a very lovely byproduct of improving your networks. And it's important to consider this in the beginning so that you can make the most out of it, because you want to grow as an organization, and this really helps. Another thing, the second project that's here is on sustainable period project. So this was conducted via a form. That's it. There was no talks. There was nothing. There was no interaction. There was just a Google form, which helped you calculate how many plastic pads or tampons you used since the time you started menstruating, and the cost of that, so the total sum. And people who were probably 25 or maybe younger had numbers in hundred thousands. That's a huge number for someone to use for something that's a biological process happening regularly. So definitely there are issues. There are policy issues with taxing of period products in India. But let's not get into that. The issue here that we were trying to focus on was about being sustainable. And and with the plastic pads and tampons being a very high cost for a lot of people, and then when they're seeing the cost right in front of them, when we showed them in the next, say, like slide, they could, or in the next page, they could see the cost in comparison of the reusable products. So that includes your menstrual cups, your uh, it includes your cloth pads, etc. So those things were definitely much cheaper, and that really encouraged people to switch. So there was around a 25% switch immediately, and there was around a 50%, okay, I'm going to think about it and I'm going to switch. So that was pretty great. That was pretty great. A lot of people did make the switch, and it did create the impact that it was supposed to create. But another byproduct of this event was that it was able to, or rather, this was done by IIT Gandhinagar, and IIT Gandhinagar did not have a student team of a student or club which focused on environmental issues. And this project brought together a few people, and it made that club happen. So today we have a club called the Green Club, and they do outreach events, or rather they try to do outreach events within the institute to raise awareness on sustainability and climate change. So that's a great byproduct. And so different types of events are suitable for different types of organizations, depending on the goal and depending on what their target audience is. So with that, I think I'll go to the pros of outreach. I mean, I've covered quite a lot of pros of outreach, but um, it's important to always keep remembering that social impact, community awareness is the most important thing. Networking comes after. and other things as well that come in with outreach. But the social impact and community awareness is extremely important. That's the main reason why you're doing any sort of outreach that you're doing. So again, coming down to Synapse Society, the reason why this is a good outreach event is because it reaches not to populations that are already within a network of neuroscience education, but it reaches new learners. So we've got maybe people who are PhD students or master students, but they're in a different field. So um, they're joining Synapse Society and they're learning new things about neuroscience. And we have mostly high schoolers, undergraduates, sometimes even from different fields who are just interested in neuroscience, but they just didn't know that something like this existed. So they took some life sciences field, which there is a little awareness about in India. And when they see this, they feel, oh, you know what, this seems like something that I wanted to do, but I just didn't know. So we're able to reach this target audience, which wants to learn more and does not know. We do not want to reach an audience which already has awareness about these topics, about the resources that you can go to for doing a neuroscience degree. And another event that I did solely through the Ibro Dana Brain Awareness Week grant was the Brain Awareness Week. It was a week-long event, and it was done online. It was done in the month of March. March, I believe, May, I believe May. Yes, that was when COVID was just starting out, and we did not really know what that was. We didn't know how. We just knew that we had to do it online, and the Brain Awareness Week was supposed to be about brain awareness. It was supposed to be about educating people about neuroscience, telling them about opportunities, getting them to meet speakers and talk to them, and tell them about how fascinating this part of our body is. And I think it was that, but it became more than that. During the COVID pandemic, people were so confused, and mostly people were lonely. And this outreach event was helping them connect with a whole community and look forward to something every day when there was so much uncertainty surrounding them. And there was a lot of positive feedback that we got, that we're just so glad you had these activities. I learned so much more. I was able to distract myself from all the anxiety that I was facing because of COVID. And that was just amazing. And so it's really important to remember that when you're doing these outreach events, it's not just about social impact and community awareness. I mean, it's not like a textbook definition of, social impact. So, okay, these many people know about neuroscience, now these many people know. It's not about statistics. It's also important to remember that it's a whole experience. It's uh it's it's I mean, I can't think of anything apart from experience. I mean, it's crazy because I can't even come up with words, because it's just a feeling, right? It's what you feel. You definitely remember when you went somewhere and you saw the speaker speak, and you were able to talk to them for 5 minutes during the lunch break, or you remember how the food tasted when you went for a certain event, or you were happy to have that tag that you wore for that event. You probably have it priced, especially if you probably applied for a grant to get it. Um, and all of those things mean a lot to you. So it's really important when you're looking at outreach, you're not doing it for the sake of doing it, but you're looking at the people who are behind this, the experiences that you're trying to give them. And within that, the awareness that you're trying to build. It's so much more than just statistics. And yes, that was like very rosy. That was extremely a lovely picture. But there are some cons of outreach as well that I'll go into right now. Um, so if you think about outreach, I mean, yes, there doesn't seem to be any con as such. I mean, it sounds pretty. I mean, it's for community outreach and community benefit and social impact. So what could go wrong? I mean, why could it be wrong, right? I mean, you wouldn't think that an NGO is a wrong thing, but that, I mean, but yeah. So outreach itself is extremely important, but then the reason why I've been focusing from the beginning of the talk that it's about social impact and it's about community awareness is because sometimes it could be about other things that are not the goal, that should not be the goal. And so for example, there are sometimes organizations that are focusing on their image rather than the community benefit and impact. I mean, I haven't luckily come across any organization such, but it's possible that this is the intention, and that is definitely not the right way to go. Because if you go, so this was the third point I discussed, because if you go to the first point, if you don't think out, if your target audience is not in your mind, and if you don't think out your outreach program properly, then it's definitely not going to have any significant impact on your whatever your goal was, whatever it was trying to make people switch to sustainable products, or it is to tell them that this area with neuroscience exists. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me just try to get my battery up and running. So sorry. Please give me a second. All right, we're good. All right. Yeah, these sort of issues just happen sometimes. There's no perfect event. So we have, right. So coming down to the first point, that if you're not thinking about your target audience, you're not going to be able to make the perfect event, which is going to have significant impact. And that's what you want. You want impact. And if you're going to put in your resources and your time and everything into something that's not going to gain significant impact, it's definitely just a waste of all of those resources. You may still gain in terms of the image that you have, that you did something, and it's always okay if that didn't work out fine, because not all organizations are liable to give a report of what kind of impact their outreach created. Definitely, they have some internal reports about funds, but it's not publicly available to see what kinds of outreach impact it created. Definitely, sometimes the impact is mostly portrayed by the organization themselves, and it's not very uh, very statistically shown. So sometimes you can definitely not know what the actual impact is. So it's really possible for organizations to just, or institutions to just focus on their image rather than the community benefit. And it's important to not do that. It's important to recognize the reason why we're doing outreach. The last point that I'm just going to highlight is not reaching the communities that need it most. So, for example, we actually, I just got off one event. It was called Camp HSS. It was for humanities and social sciences. So we were trying to, IIT Gandhinagar was trying to create awareness about humanities and social sciences. As I said before, people mostly in India focus a lot on the engineering and medicine subjects, and we wanted to let high school students know. So we had students from 8th grade onwards learning about the humanities and social sciences. And what happened here, I mean, I'm glad that that event really did well and we were able to reach out to communities that needed it most. But if you go wrong in the process of outreach, it's really possible for you to not reach out to the correct community. So it's possible that during the event, you only reach out to elite institutions or schools that already have the awareness, but they're still participating because it's an outreach event. It's possible that the communities that need it most, for example, a lot of students, a lot of lower middle class students, you're not able to reach out to them because you're probably not identifying the right schools, you're not targeting the right circles, and if you don't do that, then definitely your whole, I mean, unintentionally the whole process of your outreach activity could also not get you the kind of benefits that you want. Right. So with that, I'll go to, I've talked a lot about the pros and cons of outreach, and painted a very rosy picture as well. So I'm just going to directly go into how to conduct an outreach event, because now you have a very theoretical understanding of why we do it, and what are the possible ways to do it. But then here is something like a four-step process, which is conceptualization, action, execution, and wrap up. So this is this kind of a sort of checklist sort of thing that I've created that you can use from my website. I will link it as well later on. And it's mainly just to give any beginner an idea about how to do an online event. I mean, assuming they're going to do it online. So uh, what happens today is that a lot of, though outreach is really improving, a lot of institutions, educational institutions, require probably students to do some sort of outreach events. And this is something that you learn over time. The mistakes that you make, or the things that you're supposed to do help you. The mistakes that you make help you learn what are the things that you're supposed to do. And so I mean, this is my job, and I have done very large scale events with Camp HSS having around 4,000 registrations, Brain Awareness Week having 1,500 registrations, and basically handling week long events and stuff. But it's not always possible for individuals to just come up with that sort of a plan and then just execute it, especially if you're someone who's a researcher, a student, focusing on their theoretical work. I mean, their research work is important. When you have classes, examinations, and then you have your thesis, it gets pretty hard. So I'm going to share some points on how to conduct an outreach event. Uh, this is a point. This is from a checklist. I mean, it's not that much of promotion, to be honest. I just needed this checklist to be available somewhere. Um, as I realized that there are very less resources online, and I have tried to see a lot of lovely resources that are there, but there are things that I have gained experience over after doing multiple outreach events that I feel like there should be something way more defined. I do know that there are organizations that have their own sort of toolkit that they use for outreach events, but then that's not publicly available. So I have made a checklist for you to use. It's there on my website. Shriya Naidu 95. It's a big site. I mean, I haven't even bought the domain for it. But yeah, you can just download it from there. This is what it looks like. So it's an online outreach event checklist, and you can kind of just, you have this checklist and you can just tick whatever you're supposed to do. I mean, even if you're not going to use it for ticking, you still have an idea about what are the things that you're supposed to be doing in order to for an outreach event. And so you'll be able to plan ahead, and you won't have to be surprised later on with things that you didn't think about. So let me just check the time. All right, so we have some time, and I'll go through this slide, um, and then we can have time for questions if there are any. So I'm going to cover some parts of this checklist. Of course, more details are available in the checklist itself, more in order, but these are things that I think are important for you and would make sense if I just discuss it beforehand. So the first step for planning out any outreach event is to have to sit with your team, ideate, and make a list of ideas and plans that you're planning to execute. It's really important to do it with the team so that you have some good ideas. And then after that, you can look at some technical, feasibilities if some of the ideas are possible. So, for example, if you want to make a very interactive event and you want people to organically meet, and you don't know how you want to do a networking event and you want people to meet organically, but you don't know how to do it. So you'll go online after you made your list of ideas and plans, and you'll check out what are the online tools that are available for me to make these make this something like this. So Gather Down is actually a very nice website which offers um, this kind of organic meeting and networking, and that's something that you can use. But then you have to see if you can afford it, what are the kinds of people, how many people are you expecting would come, and if that would be the right place to work out your do your outreach event. So that's your first ideation process. After you check out the technical feasibility, you go to your second ideation process in which you're reviewing all the ideas. It's always great to just ideate and then leave it and then come back to it after a while. And when you look at it again, you'll be like, oh, that I don't even know why I thought about that. And then some ideas you'll be like, oh, that's a really great idea. So it's really good to just give it some time and then always come back to your ideas after a while and try to review them. Keep backups in case some ideas work, some ideas don't work. Don't just discard them, always keep copies so you have these ideas. You may not use it immediately, but you may use it later on for some event. Then you have the third ideation process in which you approach your target audience. You try to get them in the ideation process and ask them if this is okay, if there are any technical issues, if they would be, if it depends on the target audience that you're using. So would they be using this platform? How do I do some promotion? And all of those questions, if this event is helpful or not, does this make sense or not? So it's great if you could ask someone representative from your target audience. I mean, it would be great if you can have someone in the first ideation process itself as a team member, but having it as a third ideation step as well is fine, because sometimes it's not easy to have them in your main team. After that, you want to sometimes reach out to sponsors, and it's important to have some information about what you're planning to do, how you're planning to do, um, ready, and who your target audience is. Again, target audience is just a word you're going to keep hearing again and again. So, so it's important to have that sort of information available, and more sort of pointers on reaching out to sponsors are there in the checklist. You can check it out. After that, after you have your ideation, after you have your plan ready and you're reaching out to sponsors, then you want to promote the events. And this is where you're going to mention your sponsors as well. And you're going to promote them, whatever means you want to promote them as. You could do it through social media. Social media is a great platform. You would, depending on the kind of audience, so you have to promote it seeing where your audience is. So if your audience is there on certain social media platforms, definitely go there. But if your audience is not there, so for example, for Camp HSS, we knew a lot of high schoolers may not be able to, just see the ad through the social media platforms. So we used newspaper advertisements. We reached out via emails. We called people. We called schools, and so we directly reached out to schools because we wanted participation from that set, that target audience. So yeah, so promote, and you can do this, and you can definitely do this with like science communities. That is like, so if for example we're doing an event, I can definitely ask help from simply Neuroscience or any other organization to help out. If they're interested, that would be great, so you can also reach out to right populations that way. Another tip I wanted to mention is that you can update on calendars. So FENS, Brain Awareness Week, IPRO, Society for Neuroscience, and Worldwide Neuro have their calendars, which are open and free, and you can just update your event on there. So that would make people who follow that calendar aware of that event, and they would attend it as well. And the second last point is, I mean, this is like, so when you've done your ideation, your planning, you've got your sponsorship, you promoted the event, you put it on all calendars, everyone knows about it, you executed it, and it's done. After that, you're still not done. After the event, you have to ask for feedback. I'm sure this has happened for Simply Neuroscience events as well. They always ask for the feedback, and you will probably have one for this event as well. And it's really important to get the feedback, to understand if you were able to make the impact that you wanted to make, to take these experiences, document these experiences, and ensure that whatever mistakes probably happened will not happen again. Try to understand if your audience understood it, engaged with your content well, and had a lovely experience or not. And if there were any reasons why they didn't have a good experience, try to understand why, and work on that next time if you're doing a next event. For example, you're not doing the event, just if you're just doing it for a one time thing, you're a researcher, your thesis is there, I mean you're busy, so it's still important to ask for feedback and document it so that you can give it to your juniors or anyone else who would require it later on. And so that gets me to the last point, is share your experience and impact in some or the other form of media. You can do it through blogs, you can make your own website and do it. A lot of neuroscience journals are accepting articles on events that were done, how it was done in the planning process, the kind of impact it made. And you can also publish them not as form of research articles, but as form of just journal articles. You can make a podcast, you can make a video, but it's really important to share what you did, how you did, why you did, whom you did it for. It's really important to share all of those details because documentation on neuroscience outreach is right now less, and it would be great if we could improve that collectively. So there are a lot of other points that I just couldn't cover, and I didn't want to make the points in the checklist as part of the whole presentation because there was a whole concept of like why we do outreach and pros and cons and everything that I wanted to give you a grasp of, as well as give you a lot of examples of what could be outreach. Sometimes, like you may think that an Instagram takeover is not an outreach activity, but it could be. It's still doing what we think outreach is supposed to do. And so that's why I've created the checklist. It's available on the website. You can just access it and just download it for free. There are a lot of points. I mean, this is very procedural, so that's why I didn't want to cover it here, but you can just download it for easy access. In case you use this checklist and you benefited from it, you think that some points were not right, wrong, you can just let me know your feedback as well. You can email me. If you're visiting my website, my email address is there, but I'll even put it in the chat box right now. And here are some wonderful resources that you can use. So Brain Awareness Week website has definitely lots of content on how you can plan a neuroscience event. And there's definitely this really nice paper on developing outreach events and the impact. And it's good to look at these articles and also see if you're doing outreach events, would it be possible for you to publish similar articles, or even try to look at what is the kind of impact that we're looking at, because impact is, it could be a very arbitrary word, and so you want to understand what it is. Also mention some grants. Some of them are Indian, and two of them are for Indians if they want to use it. The Cognitive Science Research Initiative from the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, gives funding for institutions and organizations. Um, it's an open grant sort of a thing, so you can just apply for it few months before with your proposal, and depending on the proposal, you may get funds for it. We also have India Bioscience that has launched their first outreach grant, and they may have more coming as well. So you can keep a check on that. And then definitely we have the IPRO-DANA grant award for South Asian countries. And I think the application is open right now. So within a week, you can enter and try to see if you have some wonderful ideas, if those would get selected for the grant. Right, with that, I end my session. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Hope I made good on time. And if there's any questions, let me
Thank you so much, Shriya. Your presentation was really informative and I really learned a lot. I'm just gonna see if there's any questions in the chat.
know. All right. Meanwhile, I'll just post some of the links that I mentioned in the
Yep.
chat.
The checklist link would also be really helpful. I'll look into that a bit more.
Right.
So since we do have some time, and I think the participants may be coming up with some questions, I just had a question. So, could you maybe describe what your typical day at Stimulus would be like?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, stimulus is something that I give certain of my hours to, but I do have like a full-time job as an outreach manager. So, I mean, uh, all in all, I do a lot of outreach events throughout the day, and we're just planning. So, I'll also cover what I do generally as an outreach manager. So, we have generally, it depends on the kind of organization you're working with. So I'm working with the Center for Cognitive and Brain Sciences, and our focus is on improving awareness, not just about cognitive science, um, but also but also trying to reach out to communities with, say, clinical disabilities, and or even inform people about clinical disabilities. Try to reach out to schools, try to reach out to students who are not aware of cognitive science. You could actually do cognitive science even if you have an arts degree. So people don't really know that. And so our focus is mostly on that. And and my day is basically I start off with a lot of social media work, and then there's definitely a lot of planning. I'm always thinking about, okay, who's my target audience, how do I get them. There's definitely a lot of sometimes calling them, calling universities, trying to talk to or identify professors that you might want to call for speaking. Also, like looking at a lot of speakers, because you're always trying to see who would be the perfect speaker for the audience that you want to go for. Because in my case, my audience is very young and very new, so we can't go for very technical speeches. So it's a lot of just kind of looking at as as diverse things as possible. You're looking at speakers, looking at different types of events. You're also looking out for grants. You're doing social media, and I think all in all, it's a very creative job because. In terms of like when you're doing online events, I mean, I want to try to do something different when I'm planning my outreach events. I want it to be engaging and fun, and so um, it's challenging. So you want to look at previous events as well, and maybe online, offline events, and kind of come up with something new, something engaging and interesting. Something that we had done was a junior research competition in which we gave high school students a topic in neuroscience. We gave them a week to prepare, and we gave them mentorship in the in the middle, and they came up with some lovely presentations as well. And you wouldn't a lot of students who are PhD students here, they were shocked to know that those kids were high school students. So yeah, that's and at the end of the event, which is definitely very stressful, you have the satisfaction of doing something better for the community. It's very selfish for me to think that way as well, because but then that's what motivates me to continue doing what I do.
That sounds really amazing.
So could you let me know how many minutes we've got more?
Yep, I think if there aren't any questions, we can end this meeting now. Just a last call. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat or feel free to unmute and ask.
Cool. Yeah, I think we can conclude there. Gurner, you may want to stop recording. I think it